Hello everyone and welcome back to the James Ramblin' Show, coming at you live on Friday night. Tonight's your host, James May.
Hello, welcome back to the James Ramblin' Show, another episode of the show. So today, this is a bit of a weirder episode because in this community post I said like last night, it was like, heads up fans, listeners and watchers of the James Ramblin' Show. This week's episode of the show's upload will come out later on during Saturday, December 17th, due to how when I tried to pre-record this guest episode with another guest, I encountered technical difficulties. In brackets, it was not fun, with OBS Studios, which I won't be using for this next recording. Back to my usual camera with my speaker turned up on my phone while the Discord call is going on. I hope you understand this won't happen constantly, as I barely use OBS, but my friend just wanted me to use it to make the audio quality sound better. That aside, it will come out later on tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. So I say that, but here's the thing, here's the thing, hold on a minute. Well, it turns out that even that plan of that particular guest episode being re-recorded and uploaded won't happen now. I have another plan in mind in case this doesn't work out. I know I already did talk about Tarantino in the last episode as a little mention, but I want to talk about his films and Martin Scorsese films a little bit more broadly. And I know I've mentioned the movies on the show a million times, but it is an alternative. So basically the point is, I had technical difficulties with this guest episode I was doing in the OBS Studios, and it was weird because I don't really use OBS Studios, so that happened. And then I said, I'll bring an alternative and talk about Tarantino and Martin Scorsese, and I read off in my phone there, but I just wanted, because if people didn't see that community tab post, I thought I'd bring you up to speed with that. So that's what we're going to be talking about this week, is that we're going to be talking about Tarantino's movies and a bit of Martin Scorsese, because I did mention Tarantino's movies slightly, but I think I'm also going to be talking about my thoughts on Henry Cavill bailing out as Superman. I did talk about Black Adam a while ago on the show, and whenever I have nothing to talk about, I think I can always come back to some movie kind of thing. Just, I'm kind of known for doing that on the show, it seems. Even with the most random stuff, I always segue back to movies, because it's something that I can't escape. Just so you understand what's going on, right? I don't want to just throw this video out there and you don't really know what's going on. So Tarantino, in the last episode I mentioned Pulp Fiction, and I mentioned Reservoir Dogs, but a week or two ago I did an entire deep dive, entire binge, whatever you want to call it, of Tarantino's movies, and I basically watched all his 9 films. I watched 2 films a day from him. Now, he only has 9 movies, and I'm gonna just quickly Google these, I know I don't read off of things on the show, but I sort of want to remember what his films were actually like, so just give me a second here. So 20 Tarantino movies right here, yeah, I know I'm not usually like this, but I just want to do this. So here we go. So he's made, according to Google, he's made The Hateful Eight, Kill Bill Volume 1, Inglourious Basterds, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Django Unchained, Death Proof, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill Volume 2, Reservoir Dogs. There is From Dusk Till Dawn as well, which we can talk about. And there's these other movies on there as well, but it's not really it's not actually films he made. The thing is with Google, when you search stuff up on Google, it tells you this director or whatever made all of these films, but it's just films based on films he's made. So Kill Bill, The Hateful Eight was a film that I watched a bit later than the other ones, or something like that, I watched Tarantino's movies in a weird order because I didn't watch them from the years it came out. But I watched The Hateful Eight. That was one. It was basically, this was a western. Pretty sure it's a western movie, and it has Samuel L. Jackson, who's in Pulp Fiction. And it's kind of like a western and they're kind of in this one location, and it kind of drags on for a while. And I think the movie is not that, it's not that good, but it gets good once it starts going, I guess you could say. There's Django Unchained, which is another western, which I definitely think that movie is a little bit better, because you have Jamie Foxx, and there's more high intensity action. and stuff like that, and it's one linear story as well, which is quite a bit of a twist from Tarantino's sort of random escapade of trying to make some random out of context thing feel so in context as you watch it. So there's that, and then there was Inglourious Bastards, which I thoroughly enjoyed that one. That was like, after watching Death Proof, that was like the one where it just came back to form with Tarantino, where he took there's this one part of the film where there's this guy just drinking milk with this guy, and you can just feel the intensity rising, and then all this crazy stuff happens, and the film is so Tarantino, right? It's a World War II movie with Brad Pitt in it, and it doesn't even feel like a stereotypical World War movie, because there's war movies that depict the war like as they're in battle and stuff, but this is like dialogue heavy, character driven stuff, so it was good to see a bit of a unique twist on the World War kind of genre here. As I mentioned, Death Proof was a film that absolutely falls flat, right? You have these boring characters, horny drunk ladies in these cars, right? And you just have boring dialogue, and it just it's like 2 hours or something, and it feels like 3 hours at this point, right? And it has Kurt Russell in it, but they're basically just sent to die in a car, and when they die in the car, it's not even interesting, right? This is the kind of movie that you can actually, the thing is with movies that you don't want to use your phone as you're watching it, but this is a movie where you could actually put it on in the background and treat it like a podcast or something, because this movie was just really boring, and it was just not for me at all. Then there was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which was this depiction of Hollywood from Tarantino's perspective, growing up in the 60s with Brad Pitt, and also Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought the movie was actually not one of his best films he made, because it was just very long. It was really drawn out, and there are times when Tarantino's films can be really long and drawn out, but it can still be interesting. This is a case where it doesn't really happen for me, and I would have to rewatch this film, because there is a lot that goes on and stuff. But it was another one linear story. It wasn't a random situation. So then we had that, right? But then there was Kill Bill Volume 1, which was really unique, because what Tarantino did is he brought Japanese fighting styles and kind of like John Wick-esque kind of combat here, where you would have some insane killings, because in John Wick you have a lot of insane killing, but she didn't kill them with pens, but like it was just a way, and it was just really artistic as well. Like, you just never really seen this from Tarantino, and so it was really good. And then going into the sequel of that with Uma Thurman, and you see that stuff, and Tarantino really does still bring home this idea that, okay, I am going to give you random things and launch straight into things, and then we're going to bring you up to speed and give you context later on, and it'll all make sense. Because there is this scene in the movie where, like, Uma Thurman's character, the White Bride or something like that, goes into this black lady's house, and they just absolutely beat the heck out of each other, and you don't really know what's going on until later on in the film. And then she has this Cargo the Pussy Wagon, and you don't really know what's going on until later on in the film, and so he just regurgitates this whole... He keeps doing this thing. He keeps doing that, and Kill Bill is an example of like where Tarantino really shines. And as I mentioned for Death Proof is like where Tarantino just recycled ideas. He used the heavy dialogue, he used that, but it was for boring characters. But if you take a look at Kill Bill, you have interesting characters, and you didn't even expect that Uma Thurman would be taking out 200 men or whatever in this building. So there's a lot of unpredictable things in the film, and it really worked. But once we get to Volume 2, it drags itself on. It isn't as enjoyable. You get you get this weird character that you spend so much time with. He's trying to train Uma Thurman, because she basically at the end of the movie and all that, she kind of lost steam, and she was bet up and stuff after all that fighting kind of thing, and you had that, and then you had her going to Kill Bill, but it took the whole movie to get there, and it just didn't seal the deal for me at all. Kill Bill Volume 1 is better than Volume 2. So that's my thoughts on that. So there's Jackie Brown, which is such an interesting one because this is a movie that's more character driven and it's a bit more, it's like about the black lifestyle. The black lifestyle in America and how black people lived amongst each other and all of that. And it was a lot of dialogue heavy stuff. Again, this is a really repetitive thing with Tarantino. It's a lot of dialogue, sort of heavy stuff here, but it's more character driven, and I respect the movie for that. As to say it's my favourite Tarantino movie, though, it's not my favourite, but I respect for what it does, right? So yeah, there's definitely that, right? It's hard to even say which Tarantino movie is my favourite, because there's quite a few good films, but then there's those death proofs. There's Kill Bill Volume 2, but Kill Bill is split into 2 parts, but it's just the second part I didn't really like that much. And then there was Death Proof and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I definitely have to rewatch some of these at some stage, you know. And I'm kind of late to the party when it comes to Tarantino, so I mean I was never raised on this kind of movie sort of thing. So yeah, I think I've said enough about Tarantino at this point. Although there is From Dusk Till Dawn, which is this really crazy movie, right? It's got Tarantino in it. It's like a psychopath guy, and he actually turns into be this psychopath, and he's obsessed with feet and all of this stuff. And then, you know, you never expect it, right? But the movie turns into this vampire story where they go to Mexico, and it's like, what? There's like stripper ladies, whatever. They turn into these vampires, and you don't really expect it. It's one of those weird movies where there's a really giant plot twist, and Robert Rodriguez is behind it, and Robert Rodriguez is behind Death Proof as well. So I'm gonna assume that the reason why Death Proof fell flat was because of Robert Rodriguez and his cheesiness, or it could have just been Tarantino thing about, you know, apparently this was like a tribute to the grindhouse genre, which is to do with, I don't even know much about the grindhouse genre. So yeah, definitely said enough about Tarantino's movies. So the other guy I was going to mention was Martin Scorsese. So Martin Scorsese is this film director like Tarantino. They're both kind of inspired from each other. Or Tarantino's inspired by him, right? He's kind of like, this guy is known for these mobster movies. So actually, I watched Taxi Driver, I watched Casino and Goodfellas, I watched Mean Streets as well, but I haven't watched any of his other movies because I realised that I was just watching way too many movies, so I kind of stopped. So Taxi Driver follows this. So my thoughts on Taxi Driver is like, Taxi Driver's this one movie where you have Robert De Niro. He's this taxi driver, and he's living life out, and it's a really depressing life. It's like basically waging it out, right? You know, Phoenix, you know, he's this wage guy, right? He's waging it out, and it's day-to-day life, you know, and then he gets screwed over by this girl because the date goes wrong. He takes her, he takes her to see this inappropriate movie, and it all goes south, and then his life is just depressing from there. And then later on, he descends, all of this depression breaks him, and he descends into a psychopath, and that's how he becomes crazier in the film. And I think it's really good, right? There's also really good smooth jazz in here. The aesthetics of New York, it really works as a movie, and it proved that, you know, that the 70s really did have some really good films. So the next movie I watched was Goodfellas, which was this mobster movie and it was like 2.5 hours long. Right, you had Robert De Niro again, you had Ray Liotta, you had Joe Pesci from Elf, you had all these amazing actors in here, and it's basically just a mobster story about the Goodfellas. And the thing is, they're not even good people. Goodfellas, that's just their name, that's just a tagline. So the whole movie is about the Goodfellas and how, you know, it's really how crazy mob lifestyle is like, and that kind of thing. And that's kind of what the movie is about. It shows you this mobster life from a perspective like that. And I think the movie kind of drags on though, because it introduces the characters. And I noticed that that Martin Scorsese's method of sort of his own little shtick or his own little niche is to do narration over things, because he'll narrate things, because you see that a lot in Taxi Driver, where you'll have a moment where he just narrates what's going on in his life. So that's kind of what Martin Scorsese's good at. So there's Goodfellas, I thought it was good, there was good performances and stuff like that, but it just drags on a little bit. So it's not a perfect movie, but it's enjoyable. straight out of the 90s, and there was this one point where at the start of the movie there's this random situation where there's this car, and they open a boot and this guy's bleeding, and then Joe Pesci's character stabs him to death or whatever, and then an hour into the movie it explains itself, so you can see that Martin Scorsese may have took something from Quentin Tarantino himself. So that's enough emphasis on that. So then we get to Casino and Mean Streets. So Casino is basically another Robert De Niro flick that's made by Martin Scorsese, and this is basically Robert De Niro's character runs a casino, and everything just goes absolutely wild. Like you see gangsters coming in and like that, and like he's that kind of casino owner that doesn't really care. Like he'll literally bring some crazy people off the street, right? That's the kind of casino owner he is. So Martin Scorsese kind of proved that he doesn't really care, and he just rolls with this mobster mentality, and that's kind of what he does. But then we get to Mean Streets, and I have to say that, okay, Robert De Niro, yeah. Then you have the guy from Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, and like that guy, he kind of helps. He's the guy from Pulp Fiction that helps Samuel Jackson and John Travolta like help get blood off their suits and stuff. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But he helps them do that. He's that same guy. He's in this movie. But I just feel like the thing is with Mean Streets, it's called Mean Streets, but it sticks to bars. It sticks to this one bar location, and it drags on a little bit. For a 2-hour movie, it kind of drags on for me, and I just wasn't a fan of the film. It sticks to one location, and the Hateful Eight did that. It was in this cabin or whatever. But you had some good action in there, but here you just have I don't know where, it just feels, I don't know. Mean Streets was a weird movie. I might have to watch it. There's a few movies where I need to watch this again. So that's kind of my thoughts on Tarantino and Martin Scorsese. So I know I don't really get relevant on this show, but there was some absolute breaking news about the Henry Cavill bailout that happened. So the Henry Cavill bailout is where Henry Cavill basically bailed out of DC, right? I remember when I made this segment about Black Adam, right? He shows up at the end of Black Adam, we're gonna fix everything, we're gonna give the fans what they want. But then there was this news that came out that Henry Cavill actually got, like, he isn't Superman anymore. So, and I think the head of DC changed or something like that, and the direction changed or something, and it stopped Henry Cavill from coming back into the DCEU, and it really annoyed me because I literally said, oh, maybe DC could actually have the upper hand against Marvel because they're giving the fans what they want, and they're not just they're not just making the same old formula, they're trying to give fans what they want. But the thing is with DC, I feel like they're kind of gonna be playing off of that cliche superhero stuff as well if this is how we're doing it. And it's really weird because, without Henry Cavill, right, Henry Cavill just bails out of Witcher, right? The Witcher situation feels really terrible. I don't really care about the Witcher show, but he bailed it because the showrunners didn't care about the lore, they literally don't even care about the character itself, the direction for Geralt, his character in the show. And then he's also doing this Warhammer show, right? He's obsessed with Warhammer, and I think he's directing it and he's producing it, and he got the rights for it. So I hope, but I do feel sorry for Henry Cavill because he's just literally been stripped away from being Superman, right? Man of Steel is, it's a darker Superman story, and Superman is all about hope, justice, hope, justice in the American way, or something like that. And making a dark movie about that wasn't really the best option. So I just think it's really a mess at DC right now, and I know a million people have probably already talked about this subject, but I thought I'd get my thoughts on it because I actually talked about Black Adam, where you saw Henry Cavill show up, right? And you just thought they kind of baited us. It's like, oh, he's gonna come back into the DCU and he's gonna do everything. He's gonna steal the show and all this stuff. And then they just say, and you see this tweet about Henry Cavill. He's like, oh, I love playing the role of Superman, but please, all this stuff, like, let's just mourn together and all that stuff. It was just really sad, because it would have been really cool to see Superman be sort of this message of hope. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Henry Cavill bailing out of Superman. I never usually touch on relevant subjects like this, but I thought I would throw it in anyway. So yeah, I think that's where I could just leave this episode. Nothing else to say really. So next week I'm going to be talking about Christmas, and I know I kind of repeated myself in this episode, but I couldn't really think of anything else here, so I hope you understand that. So I'll see you next week for the Christmas episode. I'll dive into that kind of thing. So yeah, and obviously there's actually I'm gonna tease that there's gonna be a very special episode coming after that, because I know I don't mention it on the show, but we're actually approaching, we're at 40 something, like 48 episodes. Next week's 49, and then 50. 50 is a giant number, and it's crazy to think we're almost a year into this. So I'm gonna do something special for you. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, I'll see you next week for the Christmas episode. Bye.